I have to share with y'all. When I turned 10, my mom gave me a book of Anne Sexton poems and then whispered to me, "Don't tell your dad." Really? But also, okay.
So this is ritual. Blood-dipped finger marks forehead, snake trace, slime on skin, to shed and heal, now dark, all dark. Soon sounds die. Stone cuts bond, air split by screams. Wise dreamers shape dreams, crawl where you run. Pick up your fragments, keep them safe. Others wait, join deep, as keening tongues howl moon mad. Visions, night shadows, urge. Lie quiet, be still. Press to caring earth, taking you in her lonely womb. If you need, if you ask, wants her children back, eases their pain. Twin-faced mother, bitter scents, herb-stopped nostrils, seals on the body's tomb. Ritual death, new totem, new name.
Thank you. So I love Anne Sexton, and I remember my grandmother gave me the massive copy of her collected blue book when I was 14. And I think that was really, as a teenage girl, what made me want to go into poetry. I feel like for a long time, I felt a bit embarrassed by my liking her. And I feel like actually embarrassment and shame is part of why her work is really compelling and makes it very tender.
Sleeping Beauty. Spindle or distaff, something had her flawed. An aversion to the domestic, sprung perhaps from Miss Whittaker's plump digits, pulling out her stitches one by one. She was undone. After, she thought she was immune, vaccinated against the wiles of Angel in the house, free to open the door, walk her own path. Until the Prince of Men arrived, pulling up in his Ford Cortina, sea glass eyes so deep she was drowning before she knew. The apron wrapped itself around her waist, tightened, tightened, until the prick of revelation found its way under her fingernail, released her from the spell of love, of duty, who can tell? She cut her way out with the kitchen knife, abseiled down the ivy in her underwear, cried a river to take her to a new shore. Now she claims each day, hoists her own flag, bare feet planted on earth, sheet ends and tills. Everything that grows here is hers. Thanks, everyone.
I was raised by my grandmother, who was a poetry teacher, and I learned to read by reading Anne Sexton's poetry. And I always really appreciated her because she made it okay for a woman to write about being a woman, and in that time. And I remember when she died, and that was my first clue that being a poet wasn't really safe. You know, it wasn't a safe thing.
And this is a song to the women who inspire me: Patti Smith, Margaret Atwood, Anne Sexton. It was highly commended in the 2018 Prole Laureate competition, called Cauldron Song, after Jamaica Kincaid's Girl. Full moon restless, my coven shakes chestnut leaves into shadow play. Branches squeezed so hard they moan. This is how you raise the sash. Patty waits below, hair uncombed, horses pawing the ground for worms. She holds in her cheeks so they can speak. This is how you make the leap. Margaret empties from her apron flowers gathered in Latin along the forest path, spells each word out with her long wooden spoon. This is how you stir the pot. Anne raises her arms and letters run like sweat to her hips. She shimmies, fanning flames, spins her lovers' names until they twirl round her wrists. This is how you serve the feast. 1 part story, 2 parts poem, a dash of grated elbow, zest of palm, slut spiced and bloody, our tongues conjure the dawn. Thank you.
This poem is about a photograph of Anne Sexton. She took a good photograph, as they say. And it's a photo, I mean, there are many iconic photographs, and I think that's partly because she kind of knew how to pose. As you're probably aware, when she was younger, she was on the books of the Hart model agency in Boston. So she kind of knew what to do with the camera. And there was one particular photograph, which you probably know, which does this ring any bells? Yeah? Okay, so I think that it's hard to find out with some of these who took them, but I think this one is taken by Elsa Dorfman, who was she got around the Beat Poets and was an early exponent of large format Polaroid photographs. And Elsa made these her thing, and large format Polaroids are very good for exhibitions. So they would, they'd make quite, they were good for editorial as well. So I think this was a trip that Elsa made to visit Anne Sexton when she was working. And so I kind of, there's something about the way she poses in this photograph, not just this one, a number of them, where she's aware that she is posing, but at the same time, she's trying to get something through to the camera that isn't posy. It's so unlike her poetry, which is so confessional, whereas the camera almost seems to encourage this different reaction. And that's what I wanted to get inside. So this is a poem called Regarding Anne Sexton. And it's about that photograph. About the cigarette hammered between your fingers. Does it nail you to the world? I imagine you never puff where inhalations are available, and that you're always running out of matches. The problem with this photo is that you're doing that look like 1,000 grainy poets before and after you. Eyes left, like you've just seen a burglar. And you're projecting more Joan than does you credit. Crawford, Collins, Fontaine, Sutherland, Joan of Arc, which might be fine if you were in the smouldering business. But I had you down as the Stepford arsonist. So there's not much in this shot I can believe in, except that you're sitting on a metal filing cabinet in a simple white dress fit for a prom or first communion, in front of a book stack that could crush a lumberjack. next to the royal typewriter you called your church, ready after the photographer has gone for you to slip inside again, so thin and high and wide-shouldered, looking straight ahead at your task. Thank you.
One of the things that I love about Anne is that she doesn't shy away from the flaws and the sort of savagery, really, of human existence. And she shows us that there's beauty there too.
I really enjoy listening to Anne Sexton in the car whilst I'm driving. And my favourite poem of hers is Elizabeth Gone. It actually deals with the death of a great aunt Anna, but every time I listen to it, I think about little deaths that we have during our lifetimes as we change from one phase to another. The poem that I've written is about the first time I went to London travelling alone to King's Cross, and also the first time that my daughter did too. So the experience in the poem sort of mirror each other. Elizabeth, after Anne Sexton. A similar age when we arrive, I'm dusky pink, you're Prussian and Astrakhan, inexorable station etiquette with northern decorum for the offerty of the city with our hearts in our mouths, outlines of dressmakers' chalk and urbane simplistic patterns, iron ribs, porticos, terminal pigeons nesting in the rafters. And were you scared, Elizabeth? Elizabeth, I was, hung over on a vibe in a stinking phone box where Tanya gave more in Percy Circus, and an unmet glance at a taxi rank. Your oyster in your hand slips you underground, and were we 20 or 21? What did it matter? We were gone. Thank you.
And I'm going to share a very short poem of mine from, I feel for the others who are in the same position, but I've just had a collection out with the wonderful Bad Betty Press, and this is a very short poem from that. It started off as an ekphrastic piece, but as you'll see, it was very influenced by the Sexton poem. It's called Time's Up, Mr. Wolf. Red shoes walking pavement and street, emptied of feet, steel caps, stilettos, plimsolls, pumps, scarlet, carmine, ruby, blood, high heels click the lead, one step, two step, thump, thump, thump. The smallest shoes belong to girls raised by wolves. Tonight, the girls say, we wear our wolf suits and make trouble of only one kind. One step, two step, three step, four, slide on marble floors, kick in steel prison doors. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? Mr. Wolf skulks, gut hung in fur skin, spit looped from jowl. Mr. Wolf howls as the red shoes split and gouge. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? Mr. Wolf cries foul, matted pelt studded in welts, but the red shoes are not done. Red shoes walking uptown, stamping down the rhyme, one step, two step. Mr. Wolf, what's the time? And that's it. Thank you very much.
I first read Anne Sexton as a college student. I remember my mother gave me a book of her poems and I read them. I was about 19. And the first thing that struck me about her was just how powerful she was. And I think that it really taught me a lot. And I think that one of the things that she taught me was that one of the fundamental journeys for women is to refuse shame. And I think might be what the first reader mentioned, this idea of refusing shame. And that manifests in different ways for different women. And the poem I'm going to read is called When Man Enters Woman. And I relate it in a way to some teaching that I do regularly, violence advocacy course. And every time I teach it, sex education comes up. And the students that I'm teaching talk to me about how sex education is still something that shames people, that poses sex as dangerous and sinful. Even now, it still fails to teach about enthusiastic consent. It still fails to teach about LGBTQ sex. And it still fails to talk about pleasure. And that's why I wanted to read this poem.
And that was Anne Sexton's Celebration of My Uterus from the Complete Poems of Anne Sexton. And I'll read one short poem of my own, and it is called Ovum. Like I said, at this time, at age 50, I am unmarried without children and with a fair attempt, but did not come to pass. So I celebrate with her, and her poem inspires me to celebrate, to mourn, but to also celebrate because maybe there's still hope. And my poem is called Ovum. On this day, in this hour, it breaks out of me a whole yoke. Shackled no more, free, albumin slithering, shimmering, my fecundity a cracked, forgotten egg. Formless, defying hardening in the sun, supple, soft, yet unattached. Thank you.
That's for any of us who have self-immolated at the end of a relationship. I'm sure many of us have been there. I know I have. Okay, and then I've got one of my own, which is about a very specific part of womanhood, which is what you have to deal with when you have had hormone positive breast cancer. So I am embracing the permission that Anne Sexton gives us to talk about difficult areas of womanhood. So thank you, Anne Sexton, for that. And can I just thank my friend Catrice, who is an amazing support and has been there as I explore themes of my own treatment for breast cancer the last few months. So you're a star, my dear friend. So this is called tamoxifen. Tamoxifen is a drug that you take when you have hormone positive breast cancer and you are on 5 to 10 years of heavy duty hormone therapy. It gives you hot flushes. So this is about that. So tamoxifen. The heat presses my restless spine until I would climb of my own accord into a bath of ice. Swallowed whole, a hormone cocktail adds to the sweat that dehydrates and irrigates me. Several times a day, temperatures rise to 100 degrees, a personal heat wave, tessellating skin, or the heat presses me into the swampy mattress. Either way, I am denied respite. Inside is outside, it's all the same. Fierce sucking in oxygen, and I can bear no more. Yet I must not stop taking it. I must be patient. Eat ice cream to cool down while I wait. Or I must not eat ice cream at all. Its richness is the enemy, turns my own fat cells against me. I'll give anything, do anything to sizzle just one snowflake on my flat, matte tongue. Thank you.
And so now this is my poem, yes, it's inspired by Anne Sexton as much as she's actually in it. So this is called Wraiths. So this is a poem where I meet Anne Sexton when I am 3 years old and lost. I'm 3 years old and lost, and she grabs me in the foyer of the Royal Festival Hall in London. Anne Sexton grabbing me when I run away from my mother in the foyer of the Royal Festival Hall. And I run straight into the sheer legs of Anne Sexton, talking to men, a circle of men around her. I run straight into her legs and she laughs, drops down level with my face and laughs, picks me up and swings me on her hips, swaying on Anne Sexton's hips as she strides the foyer of the Royal Festival Hall, looking for a mother and recognizing my mother by reading the fear in an unfamiliar face. Reads my mother handing me over with a smile and the slightest tap on my mother's stomach, her tapping and saying, let's hope this one's a girl, and a slight tap and a cigarette walking away. Anne Sexton walking back to the men and my mother, staring and recognizing that smile on a spot-lit poster, a poster for poetry in the foyer of the Royal Festival Hall. So this is a poem where I meet Anne Sexton in London when I am 3 years old, when we are both unmourned. So that's the end of this evening, and thank you so much for coming. It's been all that I could imagine. Thank you.